Genshin Impact is an open-world fantasy JRPG-style game made by the China-based company Hoyoverse. The game has a wide variety of topics I could cover rhetorically, including its gacha system, the way it culturally represents different countries and nationalities, and character design and how fan service may impact a game's design choices. In this video, I will not be addressing any of these, as I want to focus on this game's representation of the queer community and how it has hidden its queer subtext within dialogue and character story, as well as the reasons behind why the company chooses to not explicitly say its characters are queer. I will address why it cannot be said, how the representation started, how it evolved, and where the game currently stands. Though it possesses a large LGBTQ community, this community is often not acknowledged due to a large stigma within Chinese culture against homosexuality. It starts with the first version of the Chinese classification of mental disorders in 1978, which classified homosexuality as a mental disorder. Even though, as of 2001, it is no longer considered a mental disorder, the stigma around it still exists within Chinese culture. To this day, Chinese people within the community face discrimination that affects their day-to-day lives in many negative ways. People are often told to follow the laws of nature, defined in Confucianism. There is also a great emphasis on honor within Chinese families, and homosexuality is seen as a threat to this. Due to these views within standard culture, it cannot be explicitly stated that two characters are in a same-sex relationship within the game of Genshin Impact, or they would risk losing sales in China, which could ultimately lead to the decline and end of the game. This is the reason that the game instead implies relations between two characters through their dialogue and actions. This is not to say that Hoyoverse has not gotten bolder since the game originally came out, or that there has not been possible translation issues and differences that may lead Western audiences to have different perceptions of these characters. Looking at the very beginning of the game, this is Kaya and Albedo, two characters you meet early in your journey for the game. This example may have the least evidence of all the examples within this list, however, this laid foundations for where the game will end up in terms of hinting towards its same-sex relationships. Within the game, you can view unique dialogue where characters will tell their opinions on various topics and people. Kaya's dialogue about Albedo says, "Albedo, eh? Calm, collected, and incredibly talented. He's the type everybody likes, some even more so than others. What, you into him as well?" While small, this example implies that Kaya is interested in Albedo. Unfortunately, due to its popularity and the discourse around it, I must discuss one of the most common relationships some Western players have claimed there is evidence of. In terms of Kaya and Diluc, the translation of the game has led some players to view these two having a romantic relationship within the game. The English version of the game defines the two as strictly brothers, as Kaya was adopted into Diluc's family at a very young age. Some people commonly point out that the exact translation the Chinese refers to as them both being brothers in arms. These people then construe the care they have for each other and their interactions as not brotherly love, but that of those interested in each other. Having said this, even Chinese audiences argued that even the translation brother is the more accurate translation in the context of the game, refuting those who place them in a romantic relationship. Moving into characters with a bit more evidence pointing at the relationship, this is Beidou and Ningguang, two characters who are met within the Liyue portion of the game. Ironically, this is one of the relationships with the most evidence, and they both reside in the nation based off of China itself. Despite voice lines indicating that Ningguang actually dislikes Beidou, much of the other evidence refutes this fact. The two are revealed to often meet up with each other to chat and catch up, despite their differing positions, with Ningguang being the head of the governing body of Liyue and Beidou being a pirate captain. Despite being too busy to meet with the player at first, Ningguang is able to meet with Beidou during this exact same time frame. A common element of these interactions is that they play chess, as Beidou is one of the few people who can beat Ningguang at chess. In an event, the two have a conversation about chess that takes an odd turn where Ningguang suggests inviting a third to their chess game, giving context that maybe they aren't just having conversations about chess. Other characters such as Kazuha and Keqing, who are close to Beidou and Ningguang respectively, both express that despite being at odds, Ningguang lets Beidou get away with a lot that most other people would be severely punished for. Ningguang also says that as repayment for looking the other way for some behavior Beidou does, favors for her. Favors can be taken in many ways, both in terms of a professional and non-professional relationship, leaving it as a perfect hint towards a different relationship than that of those just professional. The most convincing piece of evidence is during the second Lantern Rite event cutscene, where the two have an interesting conversation. In regards to Ningguang's outfit, Beidou says, "Hey, check you out, looking pretty fancy," to which Ningguang responds, "Only a true treasure catches the eye of Captain Beidou. It seems I struck gold with this one." This seems like very thinly veiled flirting. Other characters within the Liyue portion of the game at this point also have hints towards them, including two teens called Chongyun and Jingcho, who are commonly seen together in every event and are heavily referenced as a pair together. Jingcho goes as far as asking Chongyun to read him a book titled Young and Hopelessly Smitten, but it goes right over Chongyun's head. These two, Kaveh and Alhaitham, are the start of the boldest and most damning evidence Hoyoverse has come out with to date. To begin, they are both roommates, which can be seen as a common romantic trope commonly seen nowadays of, and they were roommates. Also a play on the fact that history commonly labeled people who chose to not marry the opposite sex but only lived with someone of the same sex their entire lives as just roommates. They also reference each other frequently in their dialogue, both in-game and in voice lines. Commonly, characters have one, maybe two lines of dialogue specifically referencing other characters, such as the About Albedo line mentioned prior. Kaveh and Alhaitham mention each other multiple times, not limited to their specific dialogue about each other, and they both reference each other in their character stories as well. I would have more from Kaveh's end, but what I had to use was just leaks, as at the time of me recording this, he is not out in the game yet. Another important aspect is that in-game, they both view the other as their perfect mirror, and many things support that, both visually and within dialogue, and if you just look at their personalities within the game. Alhaitham is very logic-driven and stoic, but also lazy despite having high potential for much harder work. Kaveh is loud and eccentric, being driven by emotions. Alhaitham is messy and doesn't bother with interacting with people. Kaveh is artistic and wants things to look nice, and he likes to interact with others, even if it is to his detriment at times. Beyond this, on a more literal note, they have opposite idle animations, with Kaveh searching for his keys while Alhaitham holds up two sets of keys. They both also have an inverted color palette of each other. Alhaitham's least favorite food is one of Kaveh's favorite foods, and even looking at their constellations, which are both birds, they are different and represent their personalities. Alhaitham's is very sharp with lots of straight edges and not a lot of curvature to it beyond making the wings and body have a nice flip to it. While Kaveh's has a lot of rounded edges and has a very much of a flow and aesthetic design to it, much like his personality. Going into the dialogue a bit more, they do often express annoyance in the other, but the conversations often feel more like an old married couple bickering, with topics including decor and who keeps the house tidy. Alhaitham often antagonizes Kaveh in a specific instance, not explaining major events that happened while Kaveh was absent, but this is speculated to be due to Kaveh's nature. Kaveh says he knows Alhaitham better than anyone else, and the same could be said of the opposite. Kaveh does not believe he deserves kindness, so Alhaitham seems to use this antagonistic behavior of his so that Kaveh will let him help, pestering him about money owed, so Kaveh does not believe he is taking a handout by Alhaitham, letting him live with him, and trying to curb Kaveh's naivety, such as a case where Kaveh wasted all of his money on a keychain that supposedly was going to the needy. The most specific instance cited by players is when we first visit Alhaitham's house. Our companion Paimon implies that Kaveh and Alhaitham are friends, to which Kaveh smiles a bit and avoids eye contact, saying, "I wouldn't say friends, exactly." This could be interpreted that they do not get along, but the facial expressions and mannerisms imply something different. There's a lot more evidence, but I would be here all day if I went over all of it with these two. Looking into Jet now, she is an NPC met in the desert of Sumeru. Her interactions are unique in that she acts different around the male traveler Aether or the female traveler Lumine. She seems more flustered and acts more shy with Lumine, where she's more casual and friendly with Aether, often joking with him. A notable line to highlight this difference is with Aether she says, "Did you think I'd be some lovesick maiden pining for you?" And to Lumine she says, "Not a moment has passed since that I haven't thought of you." It is heavily implied here and in other cases that she has a crush on the player when we pick Lumine, but not when we pick Aether, hinting that Jet is not a sexuality that is attracted to men. Finally, I want to briefly go over the twins, Aether and Lumine. While they themselves do not express romantic interest, plenty of the other characters do towards them. While this may not have been the intention of Hoyoverse in this case, characters such as Ayaka and Zhao are implied to like whatever protagonist you choose. Zhao is more open with the main character and says, "If you awake to a knife at your throat, if monsters dig their claws into you, if death comes knocking at your door, call out my name, Adeptus Zhao. I will be here when you call." He is otherwise very closed off with many other characters, and the player is a exception to this in most cases. While references friends, the story quest with Ayaka has many of the same aspects of a date, including her dancing for the main character at the end after a day out at a festival where you both hang out and eat food and share your future dreams. The unintentional part with these two cases lies with these interactions happening whether the protagonist is the Aether or Lumine, creating unintentional same-sex relationships or intentional depending on if Hoyoverse really meant it like this or not. To conclude, Genshin Impact and Hoyoverse have become gradually bolder with hinting towards queer couples happening in their games. I do not believe, however, that they will reveal these characters to officially be together or to have a different sexuality at any point, as that is a risk to the game itself. I am excited, however, to see where the future updates will take the game and its representation in case they do decide to make any of these things official.